Hello, everyone. I'm Kristi Faltorusso. I want to thank you all so much for joining the Success Coaching Monthly CS Mastermind webcast, where we bring together professionals from across the customer experience ecosystem, from customer success managers to support specialists and everyone in between. Today's session is brought to you by Success Coaching, where they have helped nearly 40,000 customer-facing professionals for across 100 countries develop their skills that they need to excel. Whether you're in customer success, support, or any customer-facing role, you can find the right program for your learning style. You can find all the details from our offerings on our website, successcoaching.co, or in the chat where Ashley is going to provide you with some links and any coupon codes that they're currently offering. Before we begin, I want to let you know that nominations are officially open for the 2025 Customer Success Thought Leadership Awards. So please help identify customer success professionals who you believe are making an impact in the community this past year. Make your nominations by September 24th. So that is next Wednesday. Also, our last CCSM Level 1 Virtual Bootcamp of the year is coming up in November and is open for enrollment. So take advantage of that great opportunity for some live group training with Andrew Marks. Ashley will also drop any coupon codes or important links in the chat for that as well. CS Mastermind is all about real-world expertise. So no theoretical frameworks or abstract concepts here. We dive deep into practical advice and actionable insights that you can apply immediately in your role. Today, we are exploring how to master multi-channel support. So just a few quick housekeeping tips before we get started. We are recording this session and we will share the replay. So just make sure that you're paying attention if you weren't able to join or have to hop early. The replay will be available next week. We also do encourage participation here. So if you do have questions that you would like us to answer and address at the end, please use the Q&A button for all of your questions. We are going to prioritize those that have the most upvotes. So once you start to see questions coming in, go ahead and upvote the ones that you want to make sure that we are making time for today. LinkedIn Live viewers, feel free to post your questions directly in the comments. So for smooth sailing, please keep the chat window for commentary only. Now, I am really excited to introduce our fantastic panelists who will be sharing their insights with us today. So David and Kevin, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is David Ellin. I am a senior customer success consultant and a revenue architect with Winning by Design, specializing in customer success. I've been with Winning by Design for about 4.5 years. Prior to that, my last corporate role was head of customer success for a large B2B division of eBay, responsible for about $1.2 billion with a B in revenue. And I've worked across 2 startups, one that I took public, 2 high growth companies, and 2 Fortune 100 companies. So I'm glad to be here with you guys today.
Great to have you, David. Kevin?
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Metzger. I just launched Your AI Assistant Guy, where we provide fractional services and program management, AI, customer success, and training, and really also focus on supply chain as part of that. I've spent many years in information systems and information systems design, onboarding, and then customer success most recently.
Wonderful. Well, we are thrilled to have you both here, and I'm excited for our conversation today. So without further ado, guys, we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to start with a statement that might make some of you uncomfortable. The obsession with being omni-channel seems to be making customer support worse, not better. So here's what we mean. We've been told that customers want seamless experiences across all channels. So we've stretched our support teams thin, trying to be everything to everyone. We're asking individual contributors to be master writers for email, lightning fast responders in chat, empathetic in their voice, professional on the phone, and context switching between all of these in a single hour. The result, we're creating mediocre experiences across multiple channels instead of exceptional ones. I believe the controversial wisdom is wrong. Instead, of trying to deliver identical experiences across all the channels, what if we acknowledge that each channel serves different customer needs and optimize for those differences? What if we stopped pretending that a chat interaction should feel the same as a phone call? Today, our panel will challenge the traditional approach and share strategies for excelling in multi-channel support by embracing the unique strengths of each channel rather than fighting against them. I suggest that trying to be consistent across all channels might actually be hurting our customer experience. So, who wants to push back on the idea or tell me why I'm completely wrong?
Yeah, I actually don't know that you are wrong.
Well, we know I love that response.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's actually a good point being made here, right? If you try to be consistent across all channels in how you respond, then you're not responding according to the unique value that each channel brings. Now, the key is context, and how do you maintain context when the customer changes channels, but as a support engineer or as somebody providing support services, I think it's important that within your channel, you are using the correct communication strategy within that channel, taking the time in email, understanding that chat is an interactive, personal conversation, understanding on the phone that person wants to hear empathy. All of those things are important in how you respond to your customers in your support channel.
David, what are your thoughts?
Omni-channel and multi-channel sounds great to everybody. It could be more efficient, you need less reps, but it's really, really not easy to pull off correctly. When companies try to be consistent across all channels, they don't often provide the tools that they need. They don't often provide the training that they need. And there are different skills for talking to people through different channels. And so while I think it sounds great, I think more companies that try it fail at it and end up negatively impacting their customer experience. They may be saving a little bit of money, but they're negatively impacting their customer experience, maybe not attributing that to future churn at some point. And I think they need to be very cautious about trying it.
Okay, well, I know that I feel like that's something most of these companies are striving for, right? Because we've been beating that drum that like we need to be evolving towards omni-channel. So a lot of the shortcomings that you described are the reality for so many companies. So how would you, David, think about taking baby steps towards this, right? Because if technology is prohibitive or skills are a gap, but we still want to produce a better experience, but we can't go all in on omni-channel, how would you approach this then?
The first thing I would do is I would separate the terms omni-channel or multi-channel from customer experience, right? I can give a consistent customer experience with specialists in each channel, sometimes better than I can through an omni-channel experience, right? And at some point in this conversation, we might even get to talking about specialization and skills and stuff like that. But everybody thinks about it from the company-centric perspective, and that is, how can I be more efficient? How can I use fewer reps? How can I save money? And by the way, deliver a good experience. I like to think about it from the customer-centric experience, and that is, what is the experience I'm delivering through each of the channels? How do I make it consistent? And then ask the question, can I make it consistent through omni-channel, or do I need to keep them separate to deliver that consistent experience to the customer?
Okay, interesting. Now, Kevin, David described this as kind of like this strong desire to go, how to baby step into this and some of those gaps there. But what you did, David, is you kind of described it as like companies trying to optimize for efficiency first and almost thinking about the experience second. So, Kevin, let's assume, David, would you agree that that's kind of how you outlined that?
Yeah, you nailed it, Kristi.
Okay, all right, great. I don't want to make assumptions. I don't want to put words in your mouth, David. So, Kevin, if that is true, and if you agree with that, how could we optimize for experience over efficiency to maybe change the outcomes for our customers?
Yeah, I think getting to the point of being able to create an omni-channel experience, but optimizing for outcomes really is going to come down to a couple of things. I think it is going to come down to the tooling that you have in place to ensure that if a customer is switching between channels from a support perspective, and you have specialized support for the customer. So I've got an email support that they're specialized and trained in how to respond via email, and I've got chat or phone, and they're specialized in those particular areas. They need the ability to understand what the customer experience has been coming in. So you need the context of the conversation to flow in with the customer so that you can then provide the proper support through your train methodology. So when the customer started on chat, was going through, got to a point, they ended the chat, and next day they come back and realize they still have a follow-up question from what they were working on, and they send it via email. You do need the context of what just happened with the customer when you come into responding. So if the tooling's there, I think you can create the experience and have the specialized responding from specialized response from somebody trained in that area.
I love that. And I think that makes perfect sense. Now, I love that experience as your customer. But now, how do you get the executives in your company to be bought into the fact that that is important and that should be the priority over the optimization and efficiencies? Because I feel like, especially when it comes to support, everyone is thinking about SLAs. I think everyone is thinking about what are the costs and driving those efficiencies. And I think, and again, you guys can always correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that from a leadership standpoint, a business standpoint, sometimes the experience is coming second to that. So you described creating an optimal experience. How do we get the executives in the organization to prioritize that? And obviously their prioritization is going to come by way of budgets and tooling and staffing and all of that. But how do you get them bought into the fact that this should be as much about experience as it is about business efficiency?
Yeah, and I think it's tough, right? You've got to be able to go back and look at what are the measurements and the impacts of having a poor experience versus having a good experience as a customer. I'm going to use an example of a customer experience, myself as a customer experience in working with Crutchfield. Crutchfield has an amazing ability to switch context in an omni-channel experience. I called in for support. This was a couple of years ago, and I'm excited to do it again here in a little bit. But to get a radio for my daughter's Jeep, and I wanted to put a backup camera in there and all the stuff. And I was looking, there's so many options, and I didn't know what was going to fit her Jeep. And even though they have a great website and great search, when you go in and you have the look at it, it's like I don't know enough. I need help. So I called, and they were able on the phone identify exactly what I wanted, then texted me a link to a page to look at the different options. So the text came through, I clicked on it, I saw all the different options. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'd like this one. And then they were able to send me to an order page that was pre-filled. Everything was taken care of. And then communicate it via email as follow-up. So they knew what they wanted the support journey to look like. And so they designed it, right? So your question was, how do you get executives to buy in? Well, you've got to understand what did that support journey do? Well, that support journey has got me coming back for my son's car now, who's about to turn 16 in half a month.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. To do the same thing. And so can every journey work as well as that? I don't know. It was special, but you can design how you want the customer response to be, what you want the customer to feel, what you want the customer experience to be. So this is part of designing the customer experience and ensuring that you're driving. So it depends on how the company looks at valuing the customer experience. And then how do you set your KPIs to show that the customer experience contributes to renewals? How do you show that customer experience contributes to upsells? I mean, I think if you can show that, then it's easier to get the buy-in at the executive level.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, what you hit on there, which I think is interesting, and I had a very similar experience with Best Buy, where I had a conversation with the chat. They texted me some links. They filled in my data, right, because they knew who I was. So I clicked on those links. Everything was already in my cart, and then I checked out. And so within minutes, I converted from somebody who was inquisitive and not really sure what I needed to a customer who made a purchase. And there's a direct correlation between what they did and revenue for the business. And so that's an easy way for them to attribute, right, experience to dollars, and that's what the executives want to see. And so obviously in B2B SaaS, it's not as transactional, but to your point, if we can prove that what we're doing is helping drive adoption, is helping drive productivity, right? There are other leading indicators that support very much influences and contributes to that we should be tracking to help emphasize the need for these types of investments to hopefully enhance experiences. David, would you agree on that?
Absolutely, and I think Kevin nailed it at the end when he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but tying the experience back to retention and expansion through data, right? Let's look at the data and see what customers who stay with us and expand look like. Oh, we can see that they put in an average of 5 support tickets a year, and they, through these different channels, and we handled them very well. I think it says a lot to be able to use the data. The key is being able to track the data and get your hands on it. Have the right people get their hands on it. But that's the way to get executives on board, is simply to show them the data and say, when we do things this way, our customers stay with us and they end up growing with us too.
And I think you both hit on a really important point that I think as support leaders, what they need to be better about is not talking about support KPIs through the lens of SLAs and time and response time, but really what is the direct correlation or causation even sometimes between the work that they're doing and retention and growth long term. I think if they can get better about telling that story and understand their influence, they're going to be able to ask for more budget, get the headcount, get the tooling that they need to create better experiences. So I think it always goes back to data and storytelling.
Yeah. I have actually had clients who have prioritized SLAs over actually solving the customer's problem in a reasonable amount of time.
It's
Respond with something. It doesn't have to be the right thing. Just respond.
And I think all of these things are going to be interesting for us to debate today. So let's get a little bit more tactical. So what I'd love to do is just for you guys to walk me through, what is the mental shift that you believe has to exist for when we move to responding from email to live chat, right? Because there is obviously, I think, Kevin, you talked about it, and maybe you both mentioned it. There is context switching, right? Those two channels are very different. The expectations for a customer who's engaging in chat or in email, their expectations are different. So how do we think about that? If you're a support rep, what is the mental shift when you're going from one to another? And then how do you change gears effectively?
Yeah, for me, the way I think about chat is chat doesn't get better with age, and it's a real-time medium. It means you have a customer sitting in front of you. If you were working in a retail store and you had a customer come up and stand in front of you and have a conversation with you, and the phone is ringing off the hook, you should be talking to the customer that's in front of you. And so you have you have emails that are queuing up, but somebody took the time to go on live chat because they want to talk to somebody and get some immediate help. And the response needs to be quicker. And when you chat, when a chat sits there for too long, it's usually an indication to the customer. It's also very frustrating for the customer, but it's usually an indication to the customer that either the rep is too busy servicing too many customers at one time, and you're just not as important, and it creates real frustration. And it makes people think you're hard to do business with. A pet peeve of mine is when I'll send back a chat response to somebody, a vendor, and then I'm sitting there 2 or 3 minutes and I don't get a response, and I have to write, "Are you still there?" Right? There's nothing more frustrating than that. The email can sit there. Somebody's going off and doing something else while they're waiting for an email response to come in. The chat person is sitting and waiting for the next thing you're going to say.
I think it's a great distinction there. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the other thing about chat is it's when you're interacting, it's much more immediate, right? The customer doesn't expect, and you don't need to, as the service agent, take as much time to think about the response. It's more that you're having an interaction. You want to guide your customer to the correct answer, obviously, but it's an interaction. It's shorter responses. It's quicker thoughts back and forth. When it's an email support type scenario, you really want to resolve the problem in a single shot, which means you need to take the time to, as best as possible, assuming you have enough information in the context, take the time to get the right answer, word it in a way that's easily consumable, make sure the customer knows step by step what they're supposed to do to resolve the problem, and write it down. You have the time to edit it. You don't have to be as fast to respond in that scenario. You need to make sure that the response is correct. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to make sure the response is correct in the chat, but you can be wrong and correct yourself in chat. You can't be wrong and correct yourself in email, if that makes sense.
Yes, right? It's like a conversation. You could be like, oh, that's not what, you know what I mean? Like, it's easy to course correct in a discussion than it is in an email where it's like, let me go back and backtrack and rewrite a whole nother email because everything I just said was wrong. Okay, so you both obviously did a great job of articulating the nuances between chat and email. So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here. So then are there situations, organizations, environments where because we cannot manage chat effectively or efficiently that we just shouldn't have it? Like, are there certain situations where it's like, you know what? Maybe we just shouldn't go down the chat path right now. Or should everybody have chat?
I think the short answer to that is yes. If you're not prepared to do it well, you're better off not doing it. That said, I think customers expect there to be chat. I know when I'm looking for, if I'm trying to book travel or a hotel or something, and I have a question and I can't find a live chat, it's frustrating to me. So I think the expectation in 2025, 2026 is that everybody should be having, a chat session. The one thing I don't like are chatbots that do a horrible job and there's no out to a live person.
Oh, okay,
right?
so you hit on something really important there, David, and I don't want to lose you there because I do think that it's that, right? Like the getting stuck in chat. I have had like full on monologues with a chat bot and had no way out, like literally stuck in chat and could go nowhere from that conversation, which as an experience, that was horrific.
And I think to your question about should companies do chat even though they can't be successful, a lot of companies will say, well, I'm just going to throw a bot out there and we'll capture as much as we can and get as many people happy as possible. And that number probably is a very small percentage. And the people that get frustrated is a very large percentage, which only, number one, increases your email and your phone calls. And number two, probably ultimately results in some churn because your company is just difficult to do business with, right? Well, and it's not like, let's get it for the sake of getting it. You should only do it if you can do it well. Kevin, sorry.
There is an erosion experience that absolutely happens there. And I feel like there's not a lot of companies managing or monitoring that. Because there's also listen, I tell you, I've been in chat experiences where it's like, it's been so horrendous that I give up and I walk away. And now I'm not even using that product because I'm like, you know what? It was so difficult for me to even get my answer. I give up here. I'm washing my hands. I'm just going to go and on to the next thing that I have to worry about. And it's not this product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other interesting thing there is there's just no reason today to have that kind of chatbot experience. I mean, I realize if you've got it in place and you haven't designed anything, but if you're designing something now, that type of chatbot experience is really, really bad. Like not having an exit clause, not having a way of getting out to a new customer. Systems that are being designed today that are integrated with real AI bots in the back end should always have an exit clause, should always have a knowledge base that it's working from to help provide information to the customer. If it's just the old form kind of chat flow design, you should pull that off your website, in my opinion. Now, that said, too, though, I also do think it may be based on what type of business are you running. I don't know that you need a chat in every business. Who's your customer? Is it a B2B SAP support? I'm not entirely sure chat's the best way to provide support for complex SAP implementation issues. It's better to get on the phone. It's better to have an email exchange. If you're not chatting directly with like the person who can solve that problem, you're going to have a bad experience. So if you do have a chat, you better have a routing methodology to get the chat message to the person who can solve the problem, as opposed to having it go to some first level or some bot that doesn't have the context or knowledge to give that answer.
I mean, I think that that's an important distinction, right? And I think that there is certain criteria that should be considered to determine whether or not that is an appropriate solution, right? If that's an appropriate channel for you or not. What are some of the things that you think companies should consider as part of the criteria when they're determining what are the appropriate channels we should offer customers from a support experience? Well, so obviously, I think using SAP as the example, I would say maybe product complexity, or if maybe if it's an enterprise grade product, or if you've got a suite of solutions, maybe that is something that you consider. What are some other factors, and David, maybe you can jump in here, that you think are important to consider when saying these are the different channels we should offer as part of our total experience for customers?
Yeah, I think number one, again, taking the customer-centric approach, I think number one, let's find out what our customers want. How do they want to talk to us, right? And then number two, back that up by what Kevin said on complexity, right? If a customer wants to talk to us about chat, but we're SAP, then we should put some sort of front end in front of the chat and try to segment what their problem is. If they're telling us they have a complex problem, chat's probably not the right way to go. We're going to route them somewhere else that might be a better solution for them. So I would start with the customer and say, how do you want to talk to us? What's the most efficient way? Because if we don't provide them their prioritized method of communicating with us, they may not reach out to us. They may just try to solve the problem on their own or get frustrated and go, as you said, Kristi, go on to the next thing and the next product, right? Eventually. So I would start, that would be the first step I would take, is let's talk to some customers and find out what they want to do. And then from there, I would look at complexity. And then the third thing I would do is say, okay, how can we be efficient doing that with giving the greatest experience possible?
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything David said. What would I add to it? Maybe just that you also want to think about, and I guess David kind of did say this too at the end, but what's the experience not only what's the experience your customer wants to have, but what's the experience you want your customer to have as you're flowing through your process. So do you want your customer to have to experience channel change throughout the process, or do you want to keep them in a single channel because it's more efficient for the customer? Maybe it's more efficient for how you respond. Maybe it's more. So is there a way you can design your process to do that? I think those are just some other considerations I'd have, especially when considering is chat appropriate? It's kind of a front end thought process on that.
Okay, I have to dig into just one thing, just being the customer success leader that I am. So let's assume you go out and you have all these customer interviews, and by all, whatever percentage of your customer base you speak to, and they're all like, yes, David, Kevin, absolutely, I want to speak to somebody. I want a live person that I can talk to that's going to help me and help me navigate this. But you're a PLG product, and maybe it becomes cost prohibitive. So now you've gone as far as to ask your customers what experience they want, and then they've told you, for you to now be, you know what, actually, I can't even give you that. So how do you manage to something like that, where you want to do your due diligence and create the experience that they want, but it becomes cost prohibitive and it's not something you can provide?
Well, first, I wouldn't ask the question if I can't provide certain things. Maybe I ask the question differently. If I can't afford to provide live phone support, maybe I ask the question, would you prefer chat, email, or an automated agent? And I don't even give them the option for the question on phone, right? And after that, I just tell a customer that they're wrong. I know you said you want this, but that's not the way you really want it. I'm kidding.
Kevin, what are your thoughts there? That is along the lines of what I was hoping we would get to, but Kevin, I'm interested to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point. It does make sense how you phrase the question. The other item that I guess I thought about was how do you look at what the customer is telling you when they're telling you, I want support? Kristi, when we did the podcast, we were talking about communities and community response. Can you maybe achieve something through offering a community as opposed to a live support? You've got another methodology for providing a similar type of service, and maybe that's how you solve that problem.
I love that. And I like that we're talking about alternative methods here, because I do feel like chat, email, phone are like the three standard, but I love community as an alternative. And honestly, your customers, especially those who have been using your product for a long time and are strong adopters, probably can provide answers and resolution and even different use cases better than maybe even some of your reps.
Yeah.
The one caveat I'd throw out there about community is that it's important for the company to monitor the community platform and make sure that they are interacting as well. Don't just leave it to customers to talk to other customers, because if I'm asking for support from the community and I get a response from somebody that's actually wrong, and I try to go do what they tell me to do and I can't do it, I'm not holding that against the person that gave me the advice. I'm holding it against the company. I think because it was the company's community platform, they gave me the advice and it was wrong, and that gives me a bad experience. So make sure that you're monitoring and engaging in your community.
We could definitely go off on a big tangent around community and how to do that well. And I will say, listen, a customer could be providing advice based on their own experience, but let's just say, for example, the person who's responding to that has your enterprise package and they have access to 5 other things or features or different products than somebody else who might be asking it, right? So the answer is not wrong, it's nuanced. And so, this goes back to a whole lot of reasons why community could be interesting. And we could talk about the importance of having community managers, and that's a whole thing. But I appreciate the nuanced answers to how to manage through that. So let's talk about phone support, because I do feel like this introduces another level of complexity and different expectations. And I know that some people are better on the phone than others, right? Even just engaging, answering questions, asking follow-up questions, managing difficult conversations. So let's talk about this for a second. Phone support, obviously, it does intimidate folks, especially newer professionals, right? So let's just say, and not newer in their career, could be even just new to the company. So they're learning the product and having to navigate things. You don't have the ability to go and ask somebody and do the follow-up and then come back to them. You've got somebody live on the phone. So what's your secret for helping somebody who might be new build rapport quickly, handle difficult conversations with confidence? How do you bring somebody up to speed and get them comfortable enough to navigate that?
Yeah. So I think that one of my first jobs was in college as a co-op. I worked at IBM in the help center. They spent several weeks doing training before putting us out on the floor. But after the training, after you've had your, all of that in place, if you're nervous, the key is to do it. Get out there, put a smile on your face, understand that have had at least the basic training up front, and get on the phone and start answering, set your intention to do your best to answer the question. And if you don't know the answer, know your sources for where you're going to get it so that you can provide the information to the customer. If you have your intention set that way, if you're working with empathy towards your customer, most of the time, customer, especially if you're new, they're going to be pretty accepting of it and understand that you're trying to get them an answer. Now, if your first customer happens to be somebody who's been through 6 calls already, you get to have that experience too. And it's not a bad experience to learn to first hear what they're saying, understand what they've been through, and then really work to get them the answer. Try and get them the right answer this time.
I mean, I absolutely agree. There is real value in just getting reps under your belt, right? The more we do things, the more comfortable we get with them over time, and that helps build confidence. I always tell people, I'm like, confidence isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you can develop over time. It's a skill. So you can build on it. And I think that that's really important for people to understand. So the more you do something, the more comfortable you get with it. There was also something else that you said here, Kevin, and I want to spend just a second on it. It's just the psychology behind having a smile on your face when you're talking, and how that changes how you're communicating. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because I do believe that there's real value in that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I learned it in the IBM training or somewhere else along the line, but I mean, they say people can hear if you've got a smile on, and it really does make a difference. So, all right, Tony Robbins will talk about how you put yourself in a state, and the state will reflect in your mindset, and it reflects in your voice. I think all of that is actually very true. I think you feel it in your body when you start. And that's why I say you're setting your intention. If you have the smile on your face, if you're thinking about what your intention is, it's physiological, and then it can be heard in your voice on the phone.
I love that. I think it's important. I think it's something that some people forget, that it's something small that you can control, is even just how you show up when you're having those conversations, nervous or not. Put a smile on your face. It's going to change your tone and how you engage. It's also going to change, I think, psychologically how you think about the situation you're in. Because a smile is probably sending signals that you're happy and that you're in a good place, versus if you're sitting there with a frowny face or mad or confused or nervous or anxious. So that's a great point. I want to just make sure that we call that out. So David, what are your thoughts here? How are we preparing reps for support conversations, which we know are not always easy?
Yeah, so there are three key principles that would come to my mind when you ask this question. The first one is be friendly and empathetic. Friendly, we've already talked about, put a smile on your face, but be empathetic to the customer situation. Don't make it seem like they're interrupting your day by calling and asking a question. So that's the first thing. Second, don't rush to solutioning, right? If you rush to solutioning and you don't hit the mark, you're not building rapport with a customer, especially if it's a difficult conversation. Teach your reps how to ask probing questions. Even if they think they know what the problem is, ask a couple of probing questions, because it builds credibility, it builds rapport, and it sends a message to the customer that you're putting them first. It creates a customer-centric conversation that demonstrates to the customer that you're interested in what their problem is, without just trying to solve the problem, not really knowing what it is. And then the last thing I would say is exactly what Kevin started with, and confidence comes from experience and product knowledge, right? Being able to do it, putting yourself in that situation. But if you're friendly, you're empathetic, and you're asking probing questions, you're immediately establishing rapport and disarming an unhappy customer or a very frustrated customer from arguing with you, because you're immediately showing them that they're at the center of the conversation.
I think it's really important. I think those are three great points. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I think coaching people on empathy and sympathy is important. And the reason why is, right, we're empathetic when we've had a shared experience, but our support reps may not have gone through and had the same experience as our customers. So being sympathetic to the situation, I think, is equally as important. So just, there's always a nuance there. Let's flip this around, because we've talked about how to best do this. What are the absolute worst ways to prepare your team to get on these calls and to navigate support? And I say that because I think it's important for people to make sure that there is a don't do list as much as there is a do list.
I worked for a company that was probably number one on the don't do list. And that was, we'd hire somebody at 8 o'clock. We'd onboard them from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We'd hand them a list of FAQs, and we'd say, okay, log on to the calls.
And what happened?
And
just give me like a for instance. So how did that play out, real world experience for your customers?
We had reps on their first day of work go to lunch and not come back to work. That was more often than not how it played out, other than having to transfer customers to other more seasoned reps. Or a lot of customers would say, I don't think you really can help me. I need to speak to a supervisor. Right now we're inundating our supervisors. We ended up changing all of that, obviously, but that's how it started when I joined the company, and that's what I saw. That's what they were doing, and it was just horrible.
Oh, yeah, that definitely is not the playbook for success. Kevin, what do you
No.
recommend that companies avoid doing when setting their people up for great experiences? Because I think employee experience is as important as customer experience here.
Yeah, one of the SLAs I remember in one of the jobs I had was length of call, and you had to keep it under a certain amount of time. And that can be really uh, difficult if you're really pushing on that as an SLA. So I think really thinking about what your SLAs are and why you have them. I mean, that SLA is a pure cost control measure of trying to stay under amount of time. And okay, maybe you can get a cost control measure in there, but are you measuring the right cost control? Because if you're not solving the problem and you're effectively encouraging people to hang up after 15 minutes, if that's your SLA, and people were. So
They would hang up on people like middle of conversation, like I'm hitting my time allocation and effectively be like, okay, bye.
they'd be passing off to if people found efficiencies, they'd pass off to somebody else. But yeah, you basically create an inconsistent experience by doing it.
Oof,
Pass off to
okay.
somebody else, say, hey, we're going to have to call you back on this item, or can you call back the person who knows the answer to this isn't available right now. You saw all kinds of failures due to that.
Oof. Okay. Well, those are great examples of things not to do. Now let's pivot because we talked about having support reps kind of juggling between the different channels. So when you think about an individual who's having to juggle multiple channels simultaneously, so you have a rep who's maybe monitoring the chat, they're drafting emails. How do you think about prioritization and workflow management, right? Because you've got different channels and systems, and there could be community in there. It could be, I've seen support working through Slack channels with some enterprise customers. So when we think about having all of these channels accessible to customers, how do you recommend they prioritize how they manage that?
So I'll go ahead and start here by saying I think chat needs to be prioritized over email. Again, we talked about this before. Chat means that there's a live customer in front of you. They have an expectation of having an engaging chat conversation, without 3 or 4 minutes of delay between the time that they send you a question or a response and you send one back to them. So it's important that if a company is using a multi-channel environment, that they're limiting the number of chats or emails that somebody is working on at a time. Right? Don't say to a rep, okay, we're going to give you 5 chats to manage at a time. And oh, by the way, you also have to complete 10 emails an hour as an SLA. It's never going to happen. And you're going to have probably, let's see, 20 unhappy customers, very frustrated customers. So I think that's really important. And in terms of workflow, again, I think chat always comes first. Email always comes second because somebody's off doing whatever it is they're doing, waiting for an email to hit their inbox. The chat person is literally standing in front of you.
I think it's really important. Kevin, what are your thoughts there? How are we prioritizing?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things as far as prioritizing. I think David's right. I think you need to pay attention to the chats or the Zooms that are coming in first. One thing, if you are working on emails and there's some kind of expectation of acknowledgement, if you can acknowledge, one way of controlling email is acknowledge with, hey, we've received this, we'll respond within X amount of time. And I think that's good for setting expectations to the customer. Yeah, you can have automations with that even, but at least you're setting expectations as far as when the email will be responded to, because a lot of times people are looking for quick responses through the wrong channel. And that helps set that expectation. Even redirect the channel if you need an immediate response, come to chat. So I think that helps manage and keeping your focus in the right place at the right time. The other piece that I think is important, as you have this omni-channel experience, you're going to have customers switch between support methodologies. And when they do, it may be difficult to track what the last thing was. So it is really important to have the systems in place to track the previous information. Where was the last communication? What was said in the last communication? This email is maybe completely new. However, it's from this customer, and this customer's last conversation was an issue. Whatever the issue was this issue. And when you look at the context of the email, you can understand, if you have the previous context, that it's really a follow-up and not a new problem. And that understanding is important when you are switching between contexts. So I think it's important that if you're going to have this omni-channel approach, you enable it in a way that makes sure that there is consistency in the information and the context is available to support rep who's providing support at that time.
I would add one thing that isn't directly an answer. It's not an answer directly to the question that you asked about juggling, but it's a question about prioritization. I know with a lot of companies, they'll put a phone screener in front of a call to be able to route calls intelligently.
Mhm.
You can also put a screener question in front of a chat. When somebody opens up a chat, you can ask them if their issue is a general question, or if their issue is impacting their ability to use the product or to conduct business. And then you can prioritize the chats that get delivered in what order to your agents. So again, not directly related to juggling channels, but in order
but that
to
helps
provide a
drive the
better
prioritization
experience.
for you, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah,
it's telling you what
exactly.
are high ticket, high priority items, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, this is not something that we had here, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Are we using anything about customers and who they are to prioritize? So, are we prioritizing our largest, most valuable customers over other customers? Is that something that you would encourage support reps to pay attention to?
There was a question in the Q&A about that from Ola. I think I'm pronouncing that well. Ola Kanash, she asked the question, or he asked the question, how do you segment customers or interactions as side channels, require more personalized approach? So similar question. For me, I don't I'm torn between this, right? Because the customers that are paying the most deserve obviously a great experience, but I think everybody deserves a great experience. And if they're going to take the time to come to chat, um, first in, first out, unless we're screening by the highest level of priority, meaning, is this impacting your business or not? So I'm going to take the controversial approach. Kevin and you may feel differently. I'm going to take the controversial approach that you don't put your higher paying customers first. It's first in, first out, and everybody deserves a great experience. And you guys push back on me.
Yeah. So I'm not going to entirely push back, but I have a different methodology in mind. If you don't have a channel for your high priority customers, then Dave, I think you're right. But if it depends on the value of your customers, it depends on the structure of your company, but it makes sense a lot of times to have a channel for high priority customers that is a support structure that supports your high priority customers, and then it's still first in, first out. I don't want CSMs or the support team making the decision. I want it to be designed, right? I want that decision to be designed. I want that flow to be designed. I don't want the support team to have to make a decision that, oh, this customer's our highest paid customer, and therefore I'm going to go jump on them, because they'll do it every time, and or they won't do it when you want them to, and it's not really a responsibility of the person providing support to make that decision.
That's fair. Now, what about premium service, right? There are folks that pay extra to have an enhanced, we'll call it, support experience. How are you making sure that is being considered in the prioritization of communication if we have general systems and tools in place?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I would hope I have direct channel in on those support methodologies, right? And then I also hope that I've spent time designing the support structure so that if you're coming in through chat, it's done. I really want to have the context in every situation. If I'm building it today, I'm building bots that are consuming the customer context that I can actually consult with as the support agent to know exactly what the last conversation was that happened and why the customer might be asking this question to get that context back quickly. I want to be able to have that context in place. And, I know a lot of the support systems out there now are building agents that really do provide that information to a live agent in real time. So you have a live agent having the conversation, you have a support agent on the AI agent on the back end consulting with the support agent and having the conversation with the customer. And that provides if you've got your knowledge base, if you're able to load it, that provides a premium level of customer service.
I love that. Okay, so let me go. I'm going to do one more layer of questioning on this one question, and then we'll move on here. But we talked about different experiences by channel. Well, what if I have two reps in my team? Should I put one on chat and one on email, or do you think it's better to have both of them kind of working omni-channel?
It's a loaded question, and I don't think I couldn't answer that question without data, right? So the first thing I would do is I would look at my chat volume, I would look at my email volume, I would look at the efficiency model that I've set up based on my process. How many chats can a rep handle in an hour? How many emails can a rep handle in an hour? And then I would tweak my SLAs to be able to provide the right level of expectation. If I'm getting 50 emails, if I'm getting 50 chats an hour, and I'm getting 50 chats an hour, and I'm getting 5 emails a day, it's a no-brainer decision. I put people on chat, and at the end of the day, they each take an hour and they answer some emails, right? But if I'm getting 30 emails an hour and I'm getting 400 emails a day, I've got to look at my model and say, which one is more important? Do I need to handle some of both? Or do I need to say my email SLA can't be a 12-hour response or a 24-hour response? It might be a 3 or 4 day response. And then 4 days a week, I have both agents on, 3 days a week, I have both agents on chat. And then 1.5 days a week, I have both agents on email. And you come up with the model that works based on the volume that you have and what you think you can handle to provide the best experience to your customers. But make sure you're setting the expectation with the customer the right way.
Kevin, thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was actually reading the next question.
You can't skip ahead. We will do one more question though.
The question in the chat. So I'm sorry. I really don't. I was reading the question in the chat and didn't.
Fair. So
the one on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
So Kevin, when we chatted, obviously one of your takes there was that we should consider basically our customers switching channels, or can we resolve customer issues in a single channel? And that might dictate whether or not we have somebody who's just solely focused on one and somebody on the other. But if you've got customers who are going from channel to channel, context is king, right? So maybe it makes sense to have somebody who is working across them versus individualized.
Yeah. And that either working across them where the person knows what the information is, or again, I think I may have mentioned, I've kind of harped on this a little bit, or you need to have the context provided. So you need the CRM with the context so that you know what the last item or last conversation was when you're moving into the other channel. Then the other reason I think we were talking about this as to whether you have somebody specialized in each is because of the methodology of conversation, right? Which we were talking about earlier. Chat's real time, faster, whereas emails maybe a little bit more thought out. You've got to have more detail. You want it to be a one and done response. there is value in having that type of communications training and and understanding what the types of answers look like and doing that. I think the other thing that going back to AI as a value now that we do have now is you can write out an answer, put it in and say, hey, and ask. By the way, I'm a big proponent of using AI, but I'm a big proponent of using it the right way. You should be writing your email. You should be providing the context. You should be asking for, hey, how would you edit this to make it better so that I'm sounding the way I want to sound? You can use it. You can use AI to generate a lot of information, to pull that information in, but I heard somebody call it the AI sandwich. It's human AI, human. I moved to calling it the club sandwich because I think a lot of time it's human input, AI, human response, back to AI, get more AI, and then your final statement is human, right? Humans got to review what the last thing is. It really has to communicate what you want to communicate. I think you can use that as an editing process. I think you can use it as a process for gathering information. I think that process is very repeatable if you think about it that way. That club sandwich, you can really build better responses, and for whether it's email editing or whether you're trying to design a process and get information about how other companies have designed processes and bring all that stuff in, it's the same process of gathering the information as your first step, reviewing the information, providing that information back in a way that's relevant to your company, and then getting an answer out of AI that you finally review before you send on. Kind of went meta on that, but
No, I think those are all really important points. Okay. So I know that just for reminding folks who are on still, thank you for sticking with us. We do go until 1:15, so we do still have 15 minutes and we're going to get to some Q&A. So this is my time to remind you all that if you have any questions that you'd like answered by our experts, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. While you guys all do that and upvote anything that's in there, I'm going to ask us one more question. So before we wrap up today, guys, you could offer a piece of advice to any support rep on how to make them better, stronger, more proficient when communicating with customers. Let's use email as the channel. What advice would you offer them or tips to be more effective in order to create a better experience and less back and forth?
I'll start and I'll echo something that Kevin said. And in order to minimize the back and forth, I think using AI is a great way to do that because it gives you the ability to start with a draft and then hone in and refine your answer to be right on point. Beyond that, I would say make your emails customer-centric and relevant to the customer and their issue and not the company. So often I see somebody write in with a support question, and then before we give them an answer, we're already pitching them on another product that they should buy, which will help them for future problems that they're going to have. At Winning by Design, we actually have a blueprint around writing effective emails. We call it the RRR method, and it stands for relevance. Why are you writing to them? That's the opening paragraph. The reward, so what's the value or the insight that they're going to get from your response? And then the request, a request to share more information or offer moving from an email to a call if it makes sense, if their issue is more complicated. But using that RRR, relevance, reward, and request, makes it customer-centric and oftentimes will solve the problem for the customer in an efficient way and in a customer-centric way that makes them feel like you valued them taking the time to write their email.
I love that. I love a good framework. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Kevin, thoughts? What advice can we offer to them?
Yeah, I love the framework too. David, you guys have frameworks for storytelling. You have frameworks.
That's what they
for
do.
everything.
They just sit around all day building frameworks.
Right.
And creating new acronyms for us to all memorize.
But no, I like that as well. And actually it summarizes some of the thoughts that I have. I think it's important that you take the time to understand the question that's being asked, and make sure you're answering the question that's being asked when you respond to an email. I do also, I think it's important, if you don't have the full context, that you take the time to understand either because it doesn't exist from previous, the customer didn't give you all the information you need to answer the question. The customer, there is no previous context that gives that additional information. You want to make sure that you're answering the question that's being asked. So it's okay to have more than one email if you need to gather additional context. So understand what's your objective with that email when you're writing it. Is it to gather more context and make sure you ask the right questions of the customer so that you then have all the information to answer? Do you need to set up a conversation? Do you need to drive it to another channel? Then do that. I think those are the important things. Understand what the objective is before you write the email, so that you are writing the email with the objective of getting the desired results. Otherwise, you'll continue down the path of multiple emails, and if email becomes chat, you're in trouble.
Valid point. And I think that's a really good feedback. Let's solve the right problem. Okay, so although I could ask you guys 100 more questions, and I love where this conversation's going, I think it's important for me to prioritize the questions that have been provided for us. So let's take a look at our Q&A. I know that Ola had asked, how do you segment customers or interactions to decide which channel requires a more personalized approach? Slightly different than the question that I had prompted you guys with. So just taking a peek at this, what do you think there? So how do we segment customers or interactions to decide which channel requires a more personalized approach?
I think every response requires some sort of personalization. If I'm using chat, I'm repeating the person's name. If I'm writing an email, I'm addressing it specifically to that person's name. In terms of additional, more detailed level of personalization, I think if you've got an administrator who's using in a large client who's using your enterprise package, adding personalization around the products that they're using or the system that they're using or the training you've provided to their company, if it's pertinent to solving the problem that was listed in the support ticket, is relevant. We might say something like, back in November last year, we trained 75 people on how to do this. Since you've mentioned you have 30 new people, perhaps an additional training session might help solve that problem for you, right? So personalizing it back to what's been done with them in the past, if the support rep has access to that information. You might provide less personalization to an individual user from a PLG experience. You don't need a lot of personalization, and you might not have enough information to personalize beyond that. But every interaction should have some piece of personalization to it, even if it's just a name.
I think it's very valid. Okay, Abhishek asked a question and wants to know, what are the recommendations by you guys for managing Zoom calls? So there may be many parallels to the phone support, but today many and most CSMs work remotely. And what are the key skills that one has to remember when they want to leave a remarkable impression? I love the word remarkable. Yes.
Yeah, so I do think one of the things I still see a lot on Zoom calls is people won't turn on the camera. I think if you're providing support via a Zoom call and want to leave a remarkable impression, turn on your camera. Take a little bit of time to make sure you have an office like Kristi's. But you want to leave a remarkable impression. That's the answer, right? You smile, be empathetic. A lot of the same things are true. But you got to turn on the camera. You've got to have at least a professional background, so that it's or comfortable. Mine's less professional, but still, relatively neat and comfortable. There's things I still am working on.
Listen, Zoom has digital backgrounds, right? So if you don't even
you can
have
do
a
that.
space that is clean or presentable, throw on a digital background, right? Like virtual backgrounds, and you can customize them, put your logo on it. Like David's got Winning by Design behind him. So these are all things that are possible. But Kevin, I think to one thing that you said that I think is important, show up professionally. I still get on call, like I still get on Zoom calls with folks, and I recently I can't unsee what I saw, but I got on a call with a support agent who was helping me with something. He had his hood on his hoodie up and he kept going like this because he was vaping while we were having a conversation. Now I get it, we're in the comfort of your home, but that's not professional behavior.
I got to add that to the list of what people should not be doing in customer support.
It was the first thing, it was the first time I ever saw that. And I was like, is he what?
Wow.
Oh, okay. He's like, yeah, he's doing that. Okay.
Mm.
I didn't
Not
tell
good.
anybody, but it was a bad experience.
At least not until
Yeah.
now.
Well, I mean, I didn't tell you name and company, right?
We want names. We want names.
No, we will not be doxing anybody today. David, any thoughts here on how we can show up to leave remarkable experiences on Zoom?
Yeah, I think what Kevin said about having the camera on is number one. But I'll go back to what I said before on the phone support question. Be friendly, be empathetic, be sympathetic. What you added to that, I think is very important. You have to create credibility on a Zoom call, just like you would create credibility, in a chat session or in a phone call or something like that. So be prepared to ask probing questions. Make the customer feel like assuming it's a customer, make the customer feel like it's all about them. And eye contact is very important. When I work, I have 3 screens in front of me. When I'm in my office, I'm in the North Carolina mountains right now, so I don't have 3 screens in front of me. But I make it a point that I know where my camera is, and I am putting the audience directly under my camera. Right. So a lot of times I'll see people, they'll be doing like this. So I'm talking, I'm looking away at a different screen because the audience is on my other screen, but my camera's over here. That does not create confidence and credibility and rapport if I'm talking to you and I'm looking at you, but I'm over here. So look at your camera. Most cameras have a light on it, so you know exactly where to look. Drag your audience directly under your camera so you can look at somebody, but it looks like you're looking directly into the camera. That's what would
I didn't
work
even
well
think
for me.
that, like, yes, and I didn't even think to restate that. Yeah, just like where you put your equipment matters, because even if you're over here looking this way because that is where they are, they don't know that. And as far as they're concerned, you're over there playing video games, right? Like,
Right.
we don't know what you're doing. And so it's such an important call out. I'm gonna add 1 or 2 things here because I think that they're obvious, but let's pretend like they're not. And they're applicable to phone and Zoom. But when I get on calls or when I'm working with a rep, I always encourage them, let's restate the problem. Let's make sure that we're aligned on, like, what are we actually here to do? State the obvious, but like, what is the objective of this session today? I think it's really important, right? So we are all clear and on the same page. I've had a lot of customers describe a situation that is completely not at all what they were actually trying to solve for. And so making sure that we're solving the right problems early on, that alignment is key. I think making sure that we're summarizing the discussion at the end of it, leave time for that. Make sure that we have the ability to kind of synthesize what we've discussed. Make sure that you're calling out any next steps, directions. If you're going to need to send a follow-up email, state that you're going to do that, right? Sometimes it's just stating the obvious in terms of next steps and then making sure that you actually do the things you said you were going to do. Being reliable is as important as being credible. But those are things that obviously I think apply to calls, but then also transfer over when you're on Zoom as well.
Love those. Absolutely.
Okay. I think we can squeak out the very last question here because we still have 4 minutes and I'm confident in the both of you. Okay. So we did get a question that came over from LinkedIn and it said, what is the best approach for business potential leads? So I'm assuming that maybe if this is like leads that are coming in, they're asking questions about the product. So maybe it's a potential prospect who's got questions and now they're coming in via chat or support because that seems like the appropriate path for them, or that's what they're being prompted to do, maybe from the website?
Yeah, I think so. So my first approach would be to ask enough questions to figure out the best way to route that lead to the right person at the right time. The last thing you want to do is not really understand what the lead is looking for, route them to somebody who can't help them, who then has to route them again. So I would go back and I'd ask a couple of qualifying questions, and then I would route it to the right person on in the sales organization, whether it's an SDR or BDR, or directly to an account executive, to be able to help the person in the most efficient way.
Yeah. And I think on top of that, you need to have the training in place, because if you're your support team and you do get that kind of stuff, you need to have this training in place so that the support team knows what those questions are. Because that's a good point. It definitely happens. Leads come in to support, and support's sitting there, and maybe they can answer questions if they're technical, but a technical type question related to a lead is only a very small piece of the answer, right? And you need to be able to ask the probing questions. You need to be able to ask what they want to accomplish. You need enough information so that when you pass on the lead to the sales team has the context. I'm all into context these days, but it has the context to go back and have the conversation with the customer to actually help the customer move forward in their decision-making process.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you, Kevin. I think context is king. I will say one thing at the very least: if a prospect comes in, don't just close out and say, I'm sorry, we're here to help existing customers. I have had that experience too, where I was like, I just had a quick question, and I literally was shut down because they were like, oh, like basically we only like this channel is for customers only. Basically, was effectively what they said. And they closed out the chat. They definitely lost me as a lead. So also don't cost your company business and leads. Make sure that you are nurturing them and routing them appropriately. All right, that said, guys, we did end on time, which I love an on-time finish with a minute to spare. So I want to thank everyone so much for joining today. Again, please remember that voting is open for top 100. So please, if you haven't done so, go ahead and do that. Connect with both of our panelists on LinkedIn. Both Kevin and David share a wealth of information there. They're wonderful resources to have in your network. So go ahead and do that. We will be sharing information on our upcoming panels and next events. So stay tuned for that. And we look forward to seeing you on our next panel discussion. So David and Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us all today.